What you are about to witness is a fascinating interview with a gentleman called Christopher Spencer, or rather that is his pen name. He has to conceal his real name. In the following interview, Christopher speaks about his 50 plus years in the world of high-level finance, both as a banker and a finance and investment broker. He covers everything from international espionage to covert financial agreements, conmen, murder, war, and more, with a touch of personal flair. Everything you are about to hear is true. Some questions were pre-agreed and scripted to explain specific content in his books. Most are not. You can find details of where to buy his books in the video description below. This is part 5. Question 9. This brings us to the question of espionage. When and how did you first get involved in this secret world?
Well, when I was at university, my tutor asked me whether I would spy on my fellow students. As I said, it was a time of great radicalization within the student body, and he made it clear that he would like me to perhaps do this activity. I assumed he was aligned with the security service, MI5, as people call it. But at that stage, I decided I didn't want to do this, and I refused. Later on in life, as I was working in the international construction world, as I've mentioned, I got help from the intelligence agencies from time to time. And then traveling the world, I found out how dangerous the world actually was and how one should help one's country wherever one could. So I did indulge in a little help where I could at that stage. Later on, when I was an advisor to government, I was given some specific tasks to do, which I obviously can't talk about, but I was happy to do that. And since then, where I have discovered some danger to Britain, or might be able to help Britain, I have endeavoured to do that.
So the Secret Service, you've already mentioned that they could be called upon for help, or they would offer help if it benefited the country. At what point was there a crossover to them asking you to do them favours, or did they not approach you in that way? Did it just happen organically?
No, they didn't approach me. They never asked for any help. I gave some help, not directly, but to other civil servants that I knew, who were senior civil servants, and I knew they had access to the intelligence area. So I tried to give reports and help in that case. I wrote biographies of various people that I met, or where I was asked to do so. I obviously gave a general impression of the country that I had visited, which might have been of help. Later on in life, I have to be careful what I say here, but when you get to know certain people and certain situations, you can highlight those people and those situations which might be of help to them. And you can also highlight situations that you discover that you think are wrong and are not useful for it to happen as far as Britain is concerned.
I think the average person doesn't realise how dangerous the world is. As you have mentioned, it's something very close to my heart, and I think everyone really needs to be woken up a little bit to how dangerous the world is. And how, the majority of the people in this world want what we've got, and a lot of them are coming for it one way or the other, especially as things get worse. So what would you say to that, the idea that the average person just really doesn't get what's going on in the rest of the world, how dangerous it is?
Yes, I think that people live their lives, and we all have money worries. We have children, we want to bring them up, grandchildren, and we immerse ourselves in the everyday life. But the world is a dangerous place. There is envy, There's a wish, and I suppose quite likely to share in our lifestyle. And of course, certain countries are a real and present danger. So are certain individuals, and therefore they have to be stopped wherever that is possible. As far as countries are concerned, obviously you have to have a good intelligence service, you have to have good defense forces to guarantee that the price of undermining this country or invading this country or attacking this country is too high for them to contemplate. But you also have to face the way that the country can be undermined without any physical force being used. And I mean, one must be aware of how other countries can undermine this country. And these days, with the internet, with social media, it can so easily be done. And false stories can be spread, conspiracy stories can be spread, which seek to undermine the British nation and way of life.
Who has given you the most trouble throughout your career in terms of foreign countries or individuals, for example?
Who's given me the most trouble? Well, not who you think. Big organizations have some people in them who are rather idiots, let us put it that way. They're egotistical. They believe that their judgments are the judgments that everybody else has to follow. And funnily enough, not often, but sometimes you come across people who are just plain difficult. And I found out a couple of times in my life that I was facing people who I tried to convince that this was the right way forward, but they were not going to be convinced, and they tried to run contrary to what I was advising them. In one particular case, I was stopped in what I wanted to do with a major project. The project then failed. We lost it for the company. We lost it for Britain as well. But fortunately, the work I had done, some of it was saved, and some of it was used for the good of the foreign country that I was then working with.
The finance world, the international finance world, is a messy business. There's a lot of crooks, a lot of conmen, and a lot of the people that you're talking about now. How much of an effect do you think it would have on the world and the average person as a whole if the kind of freedom that these people have was limited in some way? I don't know how, but to speak to it from a point of view that these idiots ruin it for everybody else, how much of an effect do you think they actually have on the global playing field, as it were?
Well, I think that, yes, they do have an effect. I mean, we've only got to go back to 2008 and the effect that the failure to police the banks properly, first of all in the United States and then here, shows that, you know, these activities do have to be policed. The problem is that this kind of thing can happen again without we are very careful. We do have to police capitalism because capitalism is not a perfect method of running the world. The public interest also has to be very carefully brought into this situation. There are, yes, quite a few dishonest people around. In fact, unfortunately, the amount of dishonest people and the capacity to commit fraud, as we have seen, has been increased by social media, by the use of the internet. And more people, ordinary people, are being conned out of money in this way. These are real criminals. But there are also people within business who are very egotistical, very selfish, and they go out and they try and rip people off in a nicer way, shall we say, but it is still there. and this still has to be guarded against.
What value do you think industries you've worked in, from a financial point of view, what positive value do you think that has on the world? And from the aspect of capitalism, do you believe it should absolutely be protected, or should we just tear it all down and start again?
No, I think that you have to see that capitalism can bring wealth to people. And I mean, as you know, I'm look at various countries, and I've seen the influence of capitalism in some countries, and it actually has improved the average standard of living of the ordinary person. There's no doubt about that. What the problem is at the top of the system, as I've said, there are people that do not respect rules and regulations. They do not have a good feeling for their fellow human beings, and they are extremely selfish. And these are the people that have to be guarded against. I also believe very much in freedom. In China, for example, we don't have freedom, but we have a form of capitalism. The same goes in Russia. Unfortunately, that capitalism is then used to fund the top of the country, either Mr. Putin's coterie of people or the Communist Party of China, and the whole capitalist system is used to provide money for the people at the top and who are running that society.